Shibbly, shibbly. You know the Zokai full of metaphors and simile. Me get fear understand so some boy no linger. You boy, how some see people think so them get sweet on them finger. Yeah man, you no want no man talk to me. Paul is a thiefing boy. Police are searching you, you little thiefing boy. Him. You miss a thiefing boy. I'll granny want to catch your little thiefing boy. What you get where? Paul is a thiefing boy, soldier, I look for you, you little thiefing boy. You miss a thiefing boy. The citizens want dump your little thiefing boy. The way this boy thief all milk out of coffee. Send him go buy me lunch, him thief the meat out of the patty. Buy a Maggie soup, him thief the soup and left the Maggie. Him thief a whole pub up so till him in a patty baggy. The boy a thief so till the way how him thief no nice. Thief the P.O.L. out of police and left them with the ice. Granny rice and peas, him thief the peas out of the rice. Granny a swear.
If I catch you like Jesus
Christ. Paul is a thiefing boy. Police a searching you little thiefing boy. You miss a thiefing boy. I'll granny want to catch your little thiefing boy. No make him get wet. Oh, miss a thiefing boy. Soldier, I look for you, you little thiefing boy. You miss a thiefing boy. The citizens want dump your little thiefing boy. Yo, me never see a man so thief, him must sick or something. Them call him punk cause him thief punk out a pumpkin. The boy a thief all sugar out a festival dumpling. Thief from out a liquor and the rum in up a dunkin'. But they me feed for porridge and go boy some American. Sweeten it, left it and come back, the whole of the American. The boy a thief a heat out of the water when it warm. Thief the artist performance before perform. Oh, miss a thiefing boy. Police are searching you, you little thiefing boy. You miss a thiefing boy. I'll granny want to catch your little thiefing boy. No make him get wet. Oh, miss a thiefing boy. Soldier, I look for you, you little thiefing boy. You miss a thiefing boy. The citizens want dump your little thiefing boy. The way this boy thief all milk out of coffee. Send him go buy me lunch, him thief the meat out of the patty. Buy a Maggie soup, him thief the soup and left the Maggie. Him thief a whole heap of box so till him in a patty baggy. The boy a thief so till the way how him thief no nice. Thief the P.O.L. out of police and left them with the ice. Granny rice and peas, him thief the peas out of the rice. Granny a swear.
If I catch you like Jesus
Christ. Oh, miss a thiefing boy. Police are searching you, you little thiefing boy. You miss a thiefing boy. I'll granny want to get your little thiefing boy. No make him get wet. Oh, miss a thiefing boy. Soldier, I look for you, you little thiefing boy. You miss a thiefing boy. The citizens want dump your little thiefing boy.
The crown jewels, priceless, ceremonial, and sacred heart of the British monarchy for over 800 years. Held at the Tower of London, only one man has ever dared to steal them.
He's a really contradictory character, and nothing is really as it seems.
This is the true story of Colonel Blood and the theft of the crown jewels. Colonel Thomas Blood was born in County Meath, Ireland, in early 1618, the son of a prosperous blacksmith. In 1642, with the outbreak of the English Civil War, Blood initially fights for King Charles I, but would later switch sides to fight for Parliament. And as we shall see, with Colonel Thomas Blood, nothing is quite what it seems.
Colonel Thomas Blood is an incredibly charismatic but enigmatic figure as well. In fact, the name Colonel Thomas Blood is potentially not even true. We know that he was probably a captain during the Civil War, but at some time he may have just promoted himself to colonel.
Following the restoration of the British monarchy under King Charles II, Blood was forced to give up land and property, turning his fortunes overnight into ruin, and would sow the seeds for Blood's most dastardly plan.
So in the 1670s, security wasn't really what it should have been at the Tower of London as far as the crown jewels were concerned. They were kept at this time in the Martin Tower. There they were looked after by an aging ex-soldier whose name was Talbot Edwards. His job was to show people the crown jewels, and if you paid him a bit of money, you could even hold them. So Colonel Blood visits the Tower of London. He is in disguise as a parson with a woman pretending to be his wife, who's actually an actress. She pretends to faint while looking at the crown jewels. The lovely Talbot Edwards manages to help her upstairs to his private apartments where his wife looks after her.
A few days later, Blood returns to the tower, bearing gifts for Edwards' wife.
Colonel Blood suggests that he has a nephew who might be an eligible suitor for Talbot Edwards' daughter. This gives him an excuse to visit on the 9th of May, 1671, that fateful date when he arrived at the Tower of London to try and steal the crown jewels.
On the morning of the meeting, outside the Martin Tower, Blood, accosted by his son, and two other accomplices, Robert Pirrett and Richard Halliwell, meet with treasure keeper Talbot Edwards. Due to an earlier than planned arrival, Blood suggests to Edwards to show himself, his son, and Pirrett the crown jewels.
Poor Talbot Edwards didn't know that they were armed to the teeth. They had daggers and swords hidden in their canes, pistols, and they also had hammers all secreted about their person. And once they're downstairs, they attack poor Talbot Edwards. And having incapacitated him, they then start to plan to steal the crown jewels. Robert Pirrett picks up the orb and very unceremoniously stuffs it down his breeches. The crown is taken by Colonel Blood himself, and he beats it with a hammer in order to hide it in his cloak. And they're just about to saw the scepter in half when suddenly their luck changes, because they're alerted by their friend upstairs to say that Talbot Edwards' son, who's a soldier who's been away for many years, has miraculously just returned. So they start to panic at this point. They decide they're going to have to leave very quickly. And as they do, Talbot Edwards manages to sort of free himself from his bonds, make some noise, and actually it's his daughter upstairs who hears the commotion and raises the alarm more broadly.
With shots fired, Blood and his gang attempt to make a run for one of the tower gates, but eventually are overpowered by the guards. Blood and his son are held in a prison cell at the infamous tower, with many believing that their heads are consigned to the chopping block. However, Blood has other ideas.
At this point, it takes a really strange twist in this story. He demands for an audience with King Charles II. He says he has vital information for him, and miraculously, this audience is given. We don't know exactly what went on during this audience, but whatever was said was enough to have Colonel Blood freed.
To the surprise of many, Blood is also given land in Ireland worth £500 a year, a substantial amount of money in the mid-17th century.
So one of the really sad parts of this story is the figure of Talbot Edwards himself, who was so viciously attacked by Colonel Blood and his accomplices. King Charles II promised him a reward of £300, but it seems he never actually received that award.
Edwards dies 3 years after the incident in 1674. His death most likely hastened by his wounds. His tomb rests in the chapel of St. Peter's ad Vincula, located within the tower walls. Blood would go on to supply his services to the government as a spy, but would later find himself once again back behind bars. Shortly after his release, on the 24th of August 1680, at his home in Westminster, Colonel Thomas Blood would draw his last breath. He was 62 years old. Today, the crown jewels still lie at the Tower of London, and Colonel Thomas Blood remains the only person in history that ever dared to steal them.
You're watching Today I Found Out, and in the video today, Swift Nick Nevinson and his remarkable dash to secure an alibi. One of only two highwaymen sufficiently dashing to have earned a place in Lord Macaulay's famous History of England in the summer of 1676, John Swift Nick Nevinson famously galloped from Kent to York, a journey of about 200 miles in a single very long day, all in order to create an alibi. Like much of his life, little is definitively known of John Nevison's early life. Born around 1639 to 1640 in Wortley, South Yorkshire, Nevison's family was apparently comfortably middle class. Prone to trouble though, Nevison left home while in his early teens and moved to London, where he worked as a brewer's clerk for many years. For unclear reasons, Nevison abruptly left England for Holland, purportedly after stealing the money from a debt that he was sent to collect. While in Holland, he joined the Duke of York's army in Flanders, ultimately fighting in the siege of Dunkirk in 1658. After his discharge, he returned to England and lived quietly with his father until the senior Nevison's death. At this point, he was totally flat broke, and Nevison took to the life of a highwayman, waylaying travellers and stealing their valuables. He was tall, he was charming, and had good manners, and it's reported, but this might be legend, that Nevison and his gang never or rarely used violence when accosting people on the Great North Road between Huntingdon and York. Whether just another embellishment to a legendary, not well-documented figure or not, Nevison also supposedly only targeted rich people. Although, to be fair here, it kind of just makes sense to target rich people because they have more stuff on them for him to take. So on the day that we're talking about today, the one where he earned his nickname, Nevison had robbed a traveller early in the morning at about 4 a.m. on Gad's Hill in Kent in England. Being recognised, Nevison realized he pretty swiftly needed an alibi and soon embarked on a daring journey in order to get one. Crossing the Thames River via ferry, Nevison rode through Chelmsford, Cambridge and Huntingdon before finally reaching York via the Great North Road. Pausing only occasionally for short periods to rest his horse, Nevison made the 200-mile-plus trip by sunset. He quickly stashed away his exhausted horse, and Nevison found lodgings. He then washed and dressed in clean clothes, and then strolled over to the Green, where he knew he would find the Lord Mayor bowling. He struck up a conversation with the dignitary, and he even placed a bet on the match, marking the time it was placed at 8 p.m. So, of course, Nevison was later arrested for the robbery, but since he was able to produce the distinguished Lord Mayor of York as his alibi, and the court could not conceive of making a journey that long in such a short period of time, he was acquitted. However, word got out about his daring ride and his clever alibi, and Nevison became Swift Nick. Legend actually has it that King Charles II, who would later offer a reward for the capture of Nevison, gave him this moniker. Indeed, he did not learn his lesson from this close call, and he continued to rob travellers on the Great North Road for many years to come. He was caught during his criminal career several times, but he again earned the nickname Swift Nick when he was able to escape from the authorities in 1674 from the Wakefield jail, 1676 from transportation to Tangier, some say here that he jumped ship before it left the harbour, and in 1681, and in this case he played dead with an accomplice pretending to be a doctor, saying that the plague caused his death, so, well, nobody wanted to go near the body to double check that he was actually dead. It was after this that Swiftnick decided to up his game from robbery to murder when he allegedly killed a constable named Darcy Fletcher. This constable was attempting to arrest him. With a bounty on his head, Nevison was caught in Sandal in West Yorkshire while drinking at an inn. And this was to be his end, with a short drop and a sudden stop when he was hanged at York Castle on May the 4th, 1684. As for his body today, well, it is buried at St. Mary's Church in York in an unmarked grave. So I really hope you found that video interesting. If you did, hit that thumbs up button below, and do not forget to subscribe for brand new videos just like this every day of the week. Also, let me take a quick moment to thank our patrons on Patreon. If you're interested in supporting us with a small, totally voluntary financial contribution, please do consider heading over to patreon.com/todayifoundout, checking out our page there, looking at some of those great perks we have lined up for supporters. So just take a look at that at patreon.com/todayifoundout. And as always, thank you for watching.
Blackbeard's early life is shrouded in mystery. His real name was probably Edward Thatch, and he may have been a sailor from the English port of Bristol. Some believe he fought in the War of Spanish Succession, at the end of which he found himself unemployed in the Caribbean in the last great age of piracy. So he travelled to the outlaw haven of Nassau, and turned pirate. In the spring of 1717, he sailed as second in command to the pirate captain Ben Hornigold. They cruised America's east coast, seizing and plundering 8 merchant ships. That summer, Blackbeard met Stede Bonnet, known as the Gentleman Pirate, and took over command of his ship, the Revenge. Then he returned to terrorize the American colonies once more, capturing 15 ships in just 3 weeks. Blackbeard used fear as a weapon, terrifying opponents into a quick surrender. But there's no record of him ever torturing or murdering any of his victims. That autumn, Blackbeard sailed to the Windward Islands. Off St. Vincent, he captured La Concorde, a French ship carrying 500 slaves bound for the sugar plantations. Blackbeard refitted the ship with 40 guns and renamed her Queen Anne's Revenge. He now commanded one of the most powerful warships in the Caribbean. With 4 ships and 250 crew, Blackbeard rampaged through the West Indies, capturing and burning ships, as well as the French colony of Guadeloupe. Then he sailed west. In the Gulf of Mexico, he wrought havoc amongst Spanish shipping and earned himself a new nickname, El Gran Diablo, the Great Devil. But despite many prizes, morale was low amongst Blackbeard's crew. They hadn't had a big haul in months. The men wanted gold. So Blackbeard sailed to the Florida coast, where the Spanish treasure fleet had been wrecked 3 years before. His men searched the wrecks for gold and silver, but scavengers had already taken the easy spoils, and they found little of value. Blackbeard continued north to Charleston, South Carolina. In the boldest move of his career, he blockaded the port for 6 days, seizing goods and hostages from any ships entering or leaving the harbor. Continuing up the coast, Blackbeard entered Topsail Inlet, looking for a hideaway. But his flagship, the Queen Anne's Revenge, ran aground and sank. Gentleman Stede Bonnet now chose to part ways with Blackbeard. 4 months later, he was dead, hanged in Charleston as a pirate. Blackbeard marooned part of his crew and sailed with his closest companions to Bath, North Carolina, where he secured a royal pardon from the governor as part of a pirate amnesty. He and his men set up base on Ocracoke Island, but were soon back to their old ways, plundering 2 French ships out at sea. Blackbeard claimed his loot, 180 barrels of sugar, came from an abandoned ship, but few were fooled. Alexander Spotswood, Lieutenant Governor of the neighboring colony of Virginia, now decided to deal with Blackbeard once and for all. Flouting colonial law, he sent a naval task force to North Carolina with orders to take Blackbeard, dead or alive. Lieutenant Maynard of the Royal Navy and 60 men caught the pirates off guard at Ocracoke Island. Blackbeard was outnumbered 3-1, but he fought skillfully and bravely to the end. Finally, he was cut down by one of Maynard's men. His body was found to be covered with 20 sword cuts and 5 bullet wounds. Blackbeard's head was cut off and fixed to the bowsprit of the Navy sloop to prove he was dead. Blackbeard's reign of terror lasted less than 2 years, during which he plundered an estimated 40 ships. But his careful and deliberate use of terror forged a legend that would last for centuries. Epic History TV relies on the generosity
We're here in Edinburgh, where we're going to be talking about how sources can help us understand the stories behind the stories. It's 1828, the time of one of Edinburgh's most infamous stories, the notorious killing spree of Burke and Hare. It's well known they murdered 16 innocent people, but I'm planning to use historical sources from the time to help find out why they did it. My investigation starts here at the National Library of Scotland. Wow. What we have here is a broadside. A broadside was an announcement or news article printed on just one side, which could be used as either a poster or a newspaper to get information out to the public quickly. This one looks pretty sensational. Well, it's got this really bold headline, which immediately pulls you in as a reader: execution, confession, and a list of all the horrid murders committed by Burke, and also the decision of Hare's case. And it starts with Burke being hanged. It talks about the body being cut down, and it seems particularly grisly. When the body was cut down at 8:75, the most frightful yell we ever heard was raised by the indignant populace. We've got this subheading: list of the 16 murders committed by Burke. And this tells us there was a man who died in Hare's house. The two of them sold this body to anatomists for £10. Getting so much money at a time when they were in a state of poverty prompted them to look after means of the same kind. And the subject of murder was often talked over betwixt Hare and him. So I can ask some very simple questions looking at this source. What is going on with anatomy in Edinburgh at this time? How did they know that they could sell a body to an anatomist? I think I found out all I can from the broadside. I need to look somewhere else. By 1800, Edinburgh's University Medical School was a leading centre of anatomy and the science of the human body. I've come to the university's Centre for Research Collections to see some sources relating to the anatomy shows of the time. So what is an anatomy show? Well, here we've got quite a grisly description. These courses will, as usual, comprise a full demonstration on fresh anatomical subjects. This means human bodies that are being dissected by these anatomists in front of a room full of people. We've got all these tickets. People want to go, sit round and watch these men cut people open. There's more tickets in here, and they're remarkably well preserved. Normally with tickets, you just kind of screw them up and put them in your pocket. And they are so detailed. They are very theatrical. We've got this wonderful illustration on this one here. The fact there are so many, I think, suggests that these shows were incredibly popular. We can see here that there's a fee, £3 and 5 shillings. This is actually a business. The shows were a huge success, but they needed a regular supply of bodies. And although Scottish law allowed the use of dead prisoners and even suicide victims, corpses were in short supply. So where did they come from? In Greyfriars Graveyard, there's another source which offers us a clue.
What's striking is the number of graves with cages around them.
Here we have a mort safe. This is something that people use to protect their graves. And so why are they protecting their graves? Who are they protecting it from? Well, people are actually coming in the 18th century and into the early 19th century to rob these graves. They're selling the bodies that they find to the anatomists.
By using sources, we were able to understand the motivation for Burke and Hare's killing spree. Controls such as the grave cages meant that by the 1820s, the supply of bodies was almost running out, which led Burke and Hare to turn to murder to fill the gap in the market and meet the insatiable demand. And it seems that some anatomists, like Dr. Knox, were willing to turn a blind eye to where the corpses came from. So, it's clear the rapid growth of medical science in Edinburgh provided the backdrop to Burke and Hare's grisly murders. It's a great example of the investigative process of being a historian.
अरे बीजेपी के लोगों, अब मेरे जीतने का उड़ा रहे, मेरे जीतने तो 15-16 साल पहले उड़ गए, ये मेरी जिंदगी लुटी। अरे कहते हैं पूरन देवी तो डकैत है, अपराधी है। मैं डकैत और अपराधी नहीं हूँ। इतने जोड़ की साइकिल चलेगी कि दुनिया को पता चल जाएगा कि साइकिल ने क्षेत्र का कितना विकास करा, कितने हमारे बेरोजगार भाइयों को नौकरी दी। साइकिल ध्यान रखना, साइकिल। अच्छा नमस्ते। साइकिल के अंदर है का सनावा, गाड़ी चला लोहिया का नील त्रवे का सनावा। अरे फूलन का है सब ही कैसी चरणों पर सिरदार हो भदोही मिर्जापुरावा में दिया है ना, नौकरी पक्का मिलेगी हर नौजवान को एक घर से। और मेरे भाइयों, ये नहीं उनको जमीन मिलेगी। राजनीति में आए, पर जब से हम जेल से छूटे हैं या जेल में थे, उसी टाइम से हम चिल्ला रहे कि और महिलाओं के लिए मैं 50% आरक्षण मांगूंगी और मांग रही हूँ, और जब तक लागू नहीं होगा जब तक हम लड़ते रहेंगे। औरत कहीं ना कहीं शोषित पीड़ित है, चाहे कितने बड़े घर की है, चाहे कितने गरीब घर की है, समाज में भी शोषित है, घर में भी शोषित पीड़ित है। तो जब तक महिलाओं को बराबर का दर्जा नहीं मिलेगा, जब तक तो कुछ नहीं हो पाएगा।
सूर्यामा के प्रमुख थे सारे लोग पे करते था यार, तो आपने 11-12 वो सूर्यामा के प्रमुख थे सारे लोग पे करते था यार, तो आपने 11-12
tonight with a potential break in one of the greatest mysteries in all of American history. I'm talking about the hunt for the true identity of D. D.B. Cooper. Now, he is the infamous airplane hijacker who jumped out of a plane back in 1971 with $200,000 in cash, never to be seen again. His identity is a mystery to this very day. But tonight, my next guest says that he has found that parachute that D.B. Cooper used, and that it could actually end the mystery once and for all.
We just solved it. Literally, literally. This is the rig, because they know what rig he used when he jumped that night.
Now, he says it belonged to a man named Richard McCoy Jr. Now, look at the side-by-side comparison. The parachute was found on the McCoy family property about 2 years ago. Now, he has always been a rumored longtime suspect and was killed in 1974 after pulling off a similar heist, but there's never been any proof linking him. Now, bits of money have been recovered in the past, and there have been literally hundreds of tips and leads over the years that have gone exactly nowhere. But according to my next guest, his discovery of the parachute caught the attention of the FBI, who then visited the home and took the parachute into custody. Now, we asked the FBI about this, and they wouldn't confirm nor deny. They would only point us to a 2016 statement that basically says they've stopped wasting resources on this because they've gotten nowhere. But they say something very interesting at the end of that 2016 statement. Quote, although the FBI will no longer
Pay with Klarna everywhere. One card, 2 ways to pay. Sign up now.
Yeah. Smooth, fast, reliable. Awarded UK's most reliable broadband experience 2 years in a row. Virgin Media.
investigate this case. Should specific physical evidence emerge related specifically to the parachutes or the money taken by the hijacker, individuals with those materials are asked to contact their local FBI field office. Well, joining me now is the man who helped uncover the parachute. Dan Greider, he is a retired pilot, a YouTuber, and a D.B. Cooper sleuth. Dan, great to have you here tonight. Tell me about how you found that piece of evidence and why you believe that that belonged to D.B. Cooper, who you believe is actually Richard McCoy Jr.
That's correct. Hi, Laura. Thanks for having me on. Yes, we found that parachute. It was the description of the parachute that was used that night was very, very specific in that it was modified. So all these years, for 20 years, I've been looking for this green military, highly modified parachute. And when we stumbled upon it by accident, I pulled it out and I took one look at it and I could instantly see the modifications.
But what were these modifications? How could you recognize, say, one parachute from another?
Well, it's in the parachuting world, it's very easy to tell. You take one look at where the ripcord housing is and all the modifications that were done to the front side of that. I knew what I was looking for when I pulled that out of there, and it matched exactly on first glance. I already knew this is it. It was found in McCoy's mother's possessions, deep in her storage with all of her prized possessions. She was a grandmother not related to aviation or skydiving, and she had the parachute, the canopy, his logbook. She had all that stuff tucked away in her private possessions that hadn't been seen for 53 years.
That's unbelievable to think about. And the modifications, I would assume, would have facilitated the ability to do the very heist that people are fascinated with. But you also say that the FBI asked for a DNA sample from one of McCoy's children. What are they going to do with that?
Yes. Well, I've been tracking this thing for almost 20 years. and over that 20 years, the McCoy children have never come out. They've never spoken to me. I tried like crazy to get these kids to talk to me, and they would not talk to me until both their mother and their grandmother died. Their mother, Karen McCoy, was an accomplice in both hijackings. And what most people don't know is that there was actually 2 hijackings. There was the first one, the D.B. Cooper one, and then the same guy, Richard Floyd McCoy, he went back and did the exact same thing 5 months later, April of 72. It's the same guy, but none of the kids would ever talk to me about this until they were both dead. And then they felt relieved that their mother was no longer in danger of going to prison as an accomplice in the D.B. Cooper heist.
That's incredible to think about, that they may have, according to you, believed that their family was somehow connected to any of this. There was not a charge for the mother, I understand, but you say McCoy's family, they also found a logbook. What was in that?
The logbook was a parachute jump logbook. It showed 39 previous military static line jumps accomplished by McCoy in the military. He served 2 terms in Vietnam. He was a helicopter pilot, a fixed-wing pilot, and a military-trained jumper. But the logbook showed 8 practice jumps leading up to the D.B. Cooper jump, and then nothing. This was his first free-fall parachute jump, civilian-style logbook. So he logged 39 previous static line jumps and then 8 practice free-fall jumps in anticipation of doing this hijacking, and then nothing until right before April of 72. He went back and did 1 more practice jump prior to his April 72 parachute jump, and he logged that one. All those jumps are in there. They're signed. They're in his ink. They're symmetrical. Everything matches. Larry Patterson's logbook matches Richard Floyd McCoy's logbook. They're a perfect match.
Wow. And what would have given the children an indication that either of their parents they believed to have been involved in this?
Well, they grew up with this deep family secret. This is one thing that the kids will tell you. They're not giving any interviews right now, but they will, if they could, they would tell you they're not talking, and they've lived a lifetime of knowing that they cannot talk about this. That was their family mantra. They could not talk about what their mom and dad did. Their mom and dad were both complicit in both hijackings, and they knew it.
Wow. I mean, you say that the FBI contacted you after you released your evidence video on YouTube. I got to know what that was like, talking to them, and the fact that they were leaning in and intrigued by what you found after all these years.
Well, the FBI did call. It's interesting. We've never contacted any media. We've never contacted any authority, and we have never contacted any FBI in any way. The FBI contacted us after watching my 2 YouTube videos. They were convinced, and they wanted to see what I had found. They knew specifically exactly what they were looking for, and they told us up front, we're going to look at it. We're going to meet with you. We'll meet with you at your location under your specifications. If it's not what we're looking for, we'll give it back in 7 days, because we know exactly what we're looking for. That's been a year ago. So
I'm led to believe that perhaps they are going to keep it in custody because they believe that you're onto something? Maybe everything?
They're keeping it in custody because of the DNA. The FBI cannot go by circumstantial evidence. They're going to go by a DNA link, and they're trying their hardest to make a solid DNA link between all the artifacts that will tie Richard Floyd McCoy. That's the only way they can close it, is with a solid DNA lock. They're going to keep this. Everything that I found is at Quantico, the FBI laboratory. Everything I found is in one storage location at Quantico right now, and their efforts are purely DNA related.
Has not only stunned all of France, frankly, it's stunned the entire world, with it now being reported that an estimated $102 million worth of jewels were stolen. So the race is on to not just find the culprits, but to recover the items before they can be destroyed. Welcome to Sidebar, presented by Law and Crime. I'm Jesse Weber. If I were to tell you that in 8 minutes, 7 minutes during busy touring hours at the infamous Louvre in Paris, that using a truck, a ladder, a disc cutter, and scooters, a group of thieves would be able to pull off a heist that will go down in history. As ABC has reported, an estimated $102 million worth of jewels were stolen. Would you even believe that? That's the reality. That is the reality. It's unbelievable. I was talking about this before. Somebody goes, oh, it's like Mission Impossible. No, it's Mission Possible. It's Mission Possible. And these thieves, they're at large right now at the time of this recording. In fact, according to the New York Times, here's the timeline, okay? October 19th, 9:30 a.m., the thieves parked their truck underneath the windows of the Apollo Gallery. That houses the French crown jewels. It's on the upper floor. By the way, they were apparently disguised as construction workers wearing these yellow-orange vests. They were even able to secure the surrounding area around the truck with construction cones. What do they do next? There's this electric ladder that comes out from the truck, and they climb up it, go to the upper floor, and onto a balcony. Then you remember that disc cutter, the angle grinder? Well, they use that to carve into the glass. The security alarm goes off. We're going to talk about the police response a little bit later. And then they allegedly proceed to threaten the museum security guards with the cutter, break 2 display cases, grab a bunch of historic jewelry items, and by 9:38 a.m., they jump on these Yamaha T-Max scooters, these motorbikes outside, and take off. They head towards A6 Highway and the city of Lyon. So the actual theft took about 7 minutes. Again, no one has been arrested at the time of this recording. And the New York Times has reported this detail too. So according to Paris public prosecutor Laure Bacall, the thieves got this electric ladder for the truck by falsely claiming it was going to be used for a move. And then allegedly, when someone came to check it out to verify this, they threatened that person. That person apparently filed a complaint in a town miles away from Paris. You know what the name of the town is? Louvre. Yeah, as the Prosecutor Bacall called it, a, quote, troubling coincidence. That's one way to put it. Now get this, listen to what they end up with, okay? They end up with the tiara of Empress Eugenie, so wife of Napoleon III, which contains 212 pearls, almost 2,000 diamonds, and almost 1,000 rose-cut diamonds. They also get Empress Eugenie's decorative bow, so you're talking almost 2,500 diamonds there, 200 rose-cut diamonds. They also get Empress Eugenie's brooch. There is a series of 19th century sapphire jewelry items that were reportedly worn by Marie Amélie, Queen of the French, Isabelle d'Orléans, Duchess of Guise, parts of Napoleon's emerald wedding gift set. Apparently, Napoleon gave emerald and diamond necklaces to Marie-Louise. This necklace includes 32 emeralds as well as 1,138 diamonds. And these thieves also stole a pair of emerald diamond earrings too. And apparently they also tried to make off with the crown of Empress Eugenie, but left it behind in their dash to escape. It was damaged during all of this. Now, Paris public prosecutor Bacall, who I mentioned,
so I made her pack her things and leave my home, never to come.